Hello and welcome to Camp Xbox. The backwards compatibility support on the new Xbox consoles is one of my favorite parts of the platform. I wish there were more original Xbox games, but there is a treasure trove of 360 releases. I picked 5 games recently, and today I picked 5 more great games that you can play on the Series X. And since now we're only at 10 games, there are still so many more great games to talk about. So let me know your favorites in the comments below, and maybe I'll talk about them next time. I tried to pick a mix of different genres, hidden games, and well-known games to keep this list fresh. And all footage was captured on a Series X, and I'd like to thank my YouTube channel members for their support. But let's go ahead and hop into this list. The first is a classic Xbox 360 exclusive, Fable II. It was released in 2008, developed by Lionhead Studios and published by Microsoft Game Studios. This is the sequel to the classic Xbox exclusive that was highly anticipated and soon became one of my most played games of 2008. It's a game that I return to from time to time. Fable 2 is a great RPG, and it's fantastic that it is easily accessible on modern consoles through Game Pass. It is also $20 if you want to own it digitally. Fable 2 continues the RPG elements of Fable, where it's not as focused on stats and leveling up, but instead on collecting different experience types like magic, strength, and agility, which can be funneled into new moves and other small elements to build up your hero, all taking place within the world of Albion. It's set much later than the first game, and heroes are not as revered as they once were. Magic is not something the public believes in, and it's a much grimmer outlook than the first game, with the towns having a gross industrial revolution feel. You play as Sparrow, and you discover you are a descendant of the hero from the first game, and take on your legend as a hero. It's a simple fantasy story, but the Albion world is a great one to explore. One thing I love about Fable 2 is its offbeat humor, with sarcasm in so much of its dialogue. When you visit cities and interact with the public, they have some great voice work. The interactions with its people was extremely fresh in 2008, and I still think it has an amazing relationship system, having you marry whoever you want as long as you can woo them. You can also take jobs that are fun little mini games to build up your money, and you can start a real estate empire, owning homes and renting them out. Fable 2 tries to build an RPG experience where you can do whatever you want. And of course, there are limits to that, but I think what it tries, it does well, and it's fun the entire time. And the combat is vastly improved here, and this is coming from someone who adores the original. The sword combat has a nice flow, where aiming and moving between multiple enemies feels solid and entertaining the entire time. Mixing in the easy-to-use spell system and the ranged attacks like bows and guns, it all meshes nicely. It's not doing anything fancy, and once you get the combat down, it's pretty simple, but simplicity sometimes leads to being highly entertaining, and that's what you get here. The flow is perfected, and it's a great time throughout. The game also has a unique look that stands out on the series console. The dark tones are juxtaposed against the fantasy elements, making Albion an exceptional place to walk around. This game is much larger than the first, and towns were sprawling for the time. The towns are filled with hidden secrets and treasures, and you can use your dog to help you find them. It's a fun game to slow down in and take your time breathing in the atmosphere and listening to the silly dialogue in the game. The music builds this atmosphere too, with one of my favorite composers, Russell Shaw, returning to score this game. It has strong motifs from the original, but it feels like it's on an even grander scale. That is the perfect way to describe Fable 2. It's all the charm of the original, but on a grander scale. Where the original was impressive, this one continues the tradition and makes it a standout exclusive on the console. If you're a fan of RPGs and are looking for a good one to run through, you should definitely check this one out. Next is Beautiful Katamari, the 2007 360 exclusive game developed by Now Productions and published by Namco Bandai. It is available digitally for $20. The Katamari series is one of my favorites, and this one for the Xbox 360 is an excellent addition to the Series X lineup. Many of the series staples and hallmarks play and look great on the Series X. In Beautiful Katamari, you play the prince sent out on a mission from the king of all cosmos to repair the planets in the solar system. To do this, you must roll up the objects you see and create planets out of them. You start as tiny as a coin, rolling up small objects, but every size milestone moves you up in a class. So you can go into collecting small animals, then people, and eventually mountains. This game does something I love to see in games, and that's experimenting with size and perspective. Starting small in a giant place is entertaining, and building your way up on those small objects is addicting, silly, and a joy. Once you get to the huge sizes, you feel giant, tearing up major cities and picking up enormous objects. It's insane how many objects they squeeze into this game for you to pick up. It offers a serious variety of things to see, and it gets ridiculous seeing what they come up with to put into this game. This game doesn't take a spin on the franchise, and it doesn't really do anything different. But that's okay, because the gameplay is so solid, and the ideas are fun enough to keep you going. The controls are odd, but feel great once you get it down. You use your sticks, moving them in opposite directions to turn, or push both to move forward, and what's odd at first becomes intuitive. And once you get a feel for it, it feels awesome, and it's addicting to get those special dash moves down and flow through the game's many different areas. It offers a story mode to roll through with achievements to collect along the way, but it also has a co-op mode for you to run around with someone else, which adds so much to this experience. It's also nice to see a game with such a vibrant color design on the 360. It is a generation of games riddled with dark and brown colors, but this one is the complete opposite of that, with bright, colorful graphics and an off-the-wall art style, matching minimalism with an anime style that crafts something entirely its own, which makes it unique. It also looks great on the series console and runs perfectly as well. And the music that plays in each level adds to this odd experience, having some fun art pop tracks and some experimental electronic. It really helps to keep the odd vibe strong, and other than the other games in its franchise, there really is nothing like this game. It's quick and easy to pick up, and will provide some smiles with its colorful graphics, and something about this game is endearing with how cheery it is, and it's a franchise that has stuck with me for a long time. If you've never played this edition, definitely check it out. Also, if you've never touched this franchise before and are looking for an entry, this one is readily available to play and is a blast. Let's change things up and talk about a racing game with Burnout Revenge, an early Xbox 360 game from 2006 that was originally released on the PS2 and original Xbox. It was developed by Criterion Games and published by EA. This one is only $10 digitally, and the Burnout series is one of the best racing franchises. And I thought, since we talked about Split Second in the last video, which felt like a nice play on the Burnout franchise, especially post that franchise dying, this is the Burnout franchise in its prime and does so many excellent things. If you like arcade racing, Revenge is an excellent one to play. It's about reaching breakneck speeds in these tight areas, and the campaign mode has you doing different types of events across the Burnout world. You have classic time trials and races, but the gameplay of Burnout makes it stand out amongst the rest of the run-of-the-mill racers. Here it is all about destruction, where you take out traffic blocking your path and all of the enemies standing in your way. On top of trying to get in first, you first need to corral opponents into oncoming walls or spin them out of control to get them into last place. You have to do this while trying to avoid these obstacles yourself. It makes these races feel dynamic and almost strategic. Too many times did I take a bad turn or pass to destroy a car and end up destroying myself. You have to weave through areas as fast as possible, taking in explosions, and it leads to an extremely frantic racing game. There are some great modes here, with the fan favorite and my personal favorite, Crash Mode, appearing. Here you must wreck your car into oncoming traffic and rack up money in destruction. This mode is one of the most inspiring parts of Burnout because you watch the destruction and it never gets old. The way Criterion got the destruction down perfectly to make the explosions arcadey and fun like an action movie is awesome. It's this beautiful destruction from the cars, and the world that makes this game visually stand out, and it makes Burnout Revenge unique in the lineup of backwards compatible games. It's not a glossy, shiny racer like Split Second, since this is an earlier 360 title, but I do think the look on the series console looks solid. It's a little darker and grittier than other Burnout games, but it gives this game an edginess that I like, and I think it works well with the cutthroat racing world that Revenge develops. The cars all look great, and the way destruction is rendered on them is awesome. Burnout Revenge is a treat for arcade racing game fans, and I know many people who generally don't love the genre find this series great, so it's a high recommendation for anyone. The next in the series, Burnout Paradise, would take on an open world, which I love, but I enjoy something mission-based here too. I was ranking up through the career, taking on increasingly complex challenges, and it offers you a ton of variety. It's simple and easy to pick up if you want to get a few races in and just hop off. In those quick moments, you are guaranteed a great time. Burnout Revenge is one well worth checking out. Before we move on, I want to thank everyone for watching so far. And if you are enjoying this video, please consider liking it, as it really helps out the video. And also subscribe to keep up with the retro Xbox content similar to this. But moving on, we are going to talk about another 360 exclusive classic, Gears of War 2. It was developed by Epic Games and published by Microsoft Game Studios. It is available for $12, and it's available through Xbox Game Pass. This is a third-person shooter and doesn't need much of an introduction. It was one of the most popular franchises of the 7th generation and was insanely popular on Xbox Live. Gears 2 is a fantastic playing third-person shooter and is a defining game. That being said, I usually like to put games that don't get as much recognition in these videos, but this time around, I've included ones like this in Fable because these games are well worth revisiting to be reminded how great they are. In this entry, you follow Marcus Phoenix, part of the group called the Cogs, who are fighting against the Locusts who want to destroy the planet of Sarah. You play with your squad and have the ability to play cooperatively. You learn to like the squad, with Phoenix and Dom being notable video game characters. Everybody has strong personalities, and it makes this game fun to follow from beginning to end. The story is dark and gritty, much like its visuals, which I think looking back now was a mood that leaked into other games of the generation, but for Gears, it works. It's dour and the stakes are high. Your fight could be the planet's last, and every fight with waves flowing at you has a great sense of stakes. It helps that the third-person shooter gameplay is perfected in this entry. This is a cover-based shooter, so you will be ducking behind objects and shooting enemies, but the enemies here are ruthless. You must watch all sides and duck around corners to be safe. You will be crouching, running, shooting, evading, and what may seem slow has a good sense of rhythm to it. Your character is heavy to control, but it never feels like a detriment, and asks you to think about placement and how it'll work out in the end. The shooting and solid weapon variety kept the action intense the whole time. I love the little touch of the active reloading system where you hit a small quick time to reload. It's another piece of the action puzzle that keeps the gameplay so entertaining. Throw in the always cool chainsaw guns that have you slicing and dicing your enemies, and you have a great package. And the game's look is stellar too. It features boosted frames per second on the Series X, and this game, much like its story, gets some flack today for its dark muted colors, but unlike some other games, the look works perfectly with the world of Gears, and it looks excellent doing it as well. The scale and scope of some of these levels are outstanding for its time, with gigantic vistas and weird ideas that keep the game fresh. I love the sections inside the giant worm, which is disgustingly fun, and the chapter early on where you're on giant trucks destroying flying monsters. It's insanity at times, but it looks great while playing it. Gears 2 also has an excellent multiplayer. It was an Xbox Live staple back then, and people still play it to this day. It's the same cover-based shooting online, so it feels great and is so much fun. This game also has the classic horde mode that so many love, and we have seen it many times in games. I always thought Gears 2 horde mode was great, and I've played so many hours of it. It's still something that you can find a lot of entertainment from, especially in its multiplayer and even in its single player. Gears of War 2 was an excellent game for its time, and I'd still argue that it's one of the best in the franchise, and it's highly addicting. The final game on today's list is Skate 3, the third entry in the EA skating franchise released in 2010. It's available through EA Play and Game Pass and can be bought digitally for $20. The Skate series is an excellent alternative to the Tony Hawk franchise, which was dying out in this era, and unfortunately the Skate series has been barren until very recently. Skate 3 was the last in the franchise for a while until the new announced game, and it's an excellent skateboarding game. It still feels arcadey, but it has this great sense of control on the sticks that gives it a unique flair that makes it entertaining when pulling off insane moves. The flow and movement in Skate 3 are top-notch, with moves feeling excellent, and moving on the board has a flow that works really well with the game. I love the setting of this one in Port Caverton, which is full of clean lines and giant jumps. This town is built perfectly for skating and making your perfect niche for lines. I always love the marker system that allowed you to pinpoint a spot where you can trick on, and if you mess it up, you can go right back to the top of it with the hit of a button. It's an accessible way to reskate elements without having to trek all the way back to it. There are many game modes in Skate 3 as well, and the one I always got a kick out of, and still do when I revisit this game, is the one where you try to break the most bones in your body. You fling yourself off the board, and this game has some insane ragdoll physics, and you attempt to get the most points by hurting yourself in a competition. It's silly, but there's something about trying to break the most bones in your body that hits a certain part of my brain that just brings me so much joy. That's not the only great mode though, with modes all about getting the best shots with filmers and photographers. I love the one where you set up your camera and try to get the best snapshots from the angle that you set up. The photo mode is well done, and I love seeing the photos you take on the front of magazines. It's framed around a simple story of building up a skating team. It won't wow you, but it does an excellent job of setting up the gameplay. The unique control stick movement is back, and the control scheme lends itself perfectly to the gameplay. Flicking your stick in different directions to get different flip tricks feels fantastic, and it's hard to master, but once you practice the flow of it, it all feels just right. It's tightly made with excellent controls and has so many different elements to skate on. Skate 3 also looks great on the Series X, and feels like a serious upgrade on this console. This was one I was so happy when I heard it was returning to modern consoles. It's good for a quick pickup and play, but it's the type of game that you can quickly put so many hours into and not even realize it. It's an excellent addition to the backwards compatible lineup. But that does wrap it up for today, and I know I'm only 10 games in, so I'm definitely missing your favorite, so be sure to put in the comments what your favorites are, and maybe I'll put them in the next video. Comment below with any memories of these games. If you love them or hate them, I'd love to hear from you. Everybody's opinion is important. Leave a like as it really helps out my video. Subscribe to keep up with the retro Xbox content, and I want to give a huge shout out to my YouTube channel members. Thank you so much for your support, and I'll see you here next time at Camp Xbox.